Hey everybody, welcome to the first of your 5 key concepts for History 430-530. This is about diplomacy being a function of the executive branch. And I had to tell you, it would help me in my work so much if people understood this simple thing. And I'm not talking about my work as a professor, but I'm working with the Martin Institute and the Program of International Studies and with the Bora Foundation, often called upon to describe or defend or explain U.S. positions on topics that have been negotiated around the world, and people not understanding the difference between a diplomat and the executive branch and something being binding to the United States writ large that comes to the legislative branch as verified by the judiciary. So diplomats are sent out as representatives of the executive. Ambassadors are very much that. They have credentials that are presented when they arrive in a country or arrive in an organization to which they're accredited. They present the credentials, they're accepted, and then they are then designated as the official acknowledged representative of the executive branch in that country or to that organization. Same thing for lower level diplomats. Civil servants conduct the majority of diplomacy, not ambassadors, civil servants. So there'd be people who are lower level who are doing often the groundwork, the agreements, the preliminary work to get meetings structured. And not just Americans, but others around the world think that when the diplomat, the high power diplomat, the executive branch representative, agrees to something that the United States has then officially recognized it. One that was very commonly misunderstood is the U.S. position on the Kyoto Protocol, which is a document from 1994 that agrees in principle to limit greenhouse gases. But a protocol like that is negotiated by a representative of the executive branch, which means it's a statement of intent. It's not binding. Things can only be binding in the United States if the legislative branch agrees to be bound by it. And then it's validated by the judiciary as not violating U.S. constitutional provisions. So you really have this thing where a diplomacy is conducted day in and day out by representative of the executive, but none of what they do can be made legal, unless it's verified by the legislative branch, which leads not just to that process where sometimes it doesn't happen, but throughout the 20th century, it leads to situations where the executive branch tries to get around the division of powers by doing things that are not quite legal or blatantly illegal, depending on the situation. But they're trying to do things to get around that congressional role. We'll talk more about it when we look at the division of powers in topic 2. But this one is just keep that in mind. When you hear of a diplomat, even if it's a civil servant may be a permanent hire, contingent upon meeting all their employment criteria. But they may be a permanent hire intending to serve a career under a variety of different presidents, different executives from different parties, but they still are a representative of the executive. And so they're bound to adopt and promote the policies laid down by that executive. An ambassador usually serves at the pleasure of the executive is a little bit different, and so you can assume that they would be a representative of the executive. But that's how diplomacy works. And it's not just through the State Department. There are a couple of dozen U.S. federal agencies that have foreign affairs components where they go out and serve as diplomats of a kind. So I have alums who are in the Department of Commerce doing really interesting international diplomacy work, Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, in addition to Department of State. So keep that in mind. Diplomacy is a function of the executive branch.